I think we shall now go on to our next speaker, our very eminent Dr. Mahesh Shanmugam, who is going to be talking on tumors of the optic disc. On to you, Dr. Mahesh.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. You can see my slides.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Chitra and the ARC for this opportunity to meet you all virtually. I'll be speaking about optic disc tumors in the next few minutes. So most often what we would do is look at this pigmented lesion at the optic disc. This is what we commonly come across when we routinely examine the fundus. So this would be the melanocytoma. It could be just a gray or a black pigment at the optic nerve, which is not elevated, and an incidental finding, and the patient is just followed up and doesn't need any treatment. But not all melanocytomas are innocuous. Melanocytomas can increase in size and can result in a visual field defect. That's when the patient can present symptomatically. And when it increases in size, what happens is it outgrows its blood supply and can set up an inflammation. So if you see carefully here, there are radially arranged hard exudates. So the patient can present with neuroretinitis. So a patient with melanocytoma can present with decrease in vision because of the neuroretinitis. And when the tumor undergoes necrosis, it can throw the seeds into the vitreous cavity. These do not mean that the melanocytoma has turned malignant. It just as it grows, it can result in these changes. This is yet another patient. You can see a very subtle melanocytoma, but presenting with the blurred disc margin and shows leakage. So patient is presenting with optic neuritis. So rarely melanocytoma can cause optic neuritis as well as neuroretinitis, which is when these patients will need treatment in the form of steroids, which will resolve the inflammation, and the visual recovery can be there. So yet another pigmented lesion at the optic nerve head is this melanocytoma, but then if you see carefully here, there is an associated gray subretinal choroidal lesion with associated drusen. So what we are looking at here is a giant choroidal nevus associated with the optic nerve involvement. So we treated this patient in the earlier days with the transpupillary thermotherapy. While the choroidal component resolved, you can see the optic nerve component is increasing in size, and this is what happened. So what you are seeing is actually a melanoma, which is mimicking a melanocytoma, and this patient, because it was involving the optic nerve, had to undergo an enucleation. So sometimes we may not be able to find out if it is a melanocytoma or a melanoma, in which case we do a biopsy. Here we have done a vitrectomy, opened up the capsule overlaying the lesion, took a small bit of the lesion and sent for cytology. So this patient was followed up as a melanocytoma, and the lesion was increasing in size. How do we follow up these patients is do a serial photograph and then keep following up to see if the lesion is increasing. So when it is increasing and when there is a doubt and there is a visual field defect enlarging, we suspect a malignant transformation and do a biopsy, which is particularly rare. We can't do a fine needle aspiration biopsy considering the lesion is at the optic nerve. This patient ultimately turned out to be a melanocytoma, and the patient is on follow-up over the last 7 to 8 years. Moving on to another pigmented lesion. So here we see some amount of gray pigment. The lesion is little elevated, involves the optic nerve and the peripapillary region, associated with gliosis, retinal thickening, along with the vascular tortuosity. So what we are looking at is combined hamartoma of the retina and retinal pigment epithelium. This, once again, these patients may be amblyopic if this lesion involves the macula, and the OCT can be confirmatory. There are OCT changes which do tell us that this patient has a CHRRP and not an idiopathic epiretinal membrane. So you will see thickened retina and an epiretinal membrane, mini and maxi peaks, what we see here, and intraretinal sawtooth is what we see here, and the omega sign, which was described by people from RP Center, is sign on the OCT. Most often CHRRPE, nothing we do, but if in case there is a very minimal distortion of the macula, we can consider doing a epiretinal membrane removal surgery with a vitrectomy. But I have found that the membrane recurs and the visual improvement at best is about 1 or 2 lines. So most often we follow up these patients. Moving on to vascular lesions, this is a racemose angioma. You can see the dilated vessels which are looping inside, and this may involve the disc. So this again is an incidental finding in a patient who comes with an amblyopic eye. So most often these do not need treatment except in a rare situation when they develop vitreous hemorrhage when they need a surgery. Yet another vascular lesion. What we see here is the cluster of grape-like appearance. So what we are looking at is the cavernous hemangioma of the retina. So this can be in the peripapillary region involving the disc or elsewhere in the retina. So the dark red is because of the blood cell. There is a slow circulation within this lesion. So the blood cells settle down in this sac-like lesions and assume this dark red color. And the upper part is formed by the plasma. And this plasma is what stains on the fluorescent angiogram, giving rise to this beautiful FFA appearance. Once again, cavernous hemangioma, doesn't require any treatment, and if it involves the macula, the vision can be lost. But this is one rare patient who developed a subretinal hemorrhage and a vitreous hemorrhage. So we displaced the hemorrhage with intravitreal gas injection and ranibizumab because we didn't know what the diagnosis was at that point in time because it was obscured by the blood. And subsequent to clearing of the blood, we can see this beautiful cavernous hemangioma. And this we treated with photodynamic therapy. As I mentioned, usually no treatment is advised for these patients or no treatment has been suggested. But this patient underwent photodynamic therapy with the resolution of the lesion and patient got back 6/6 vision. And this is yet another patient who has this gliosis, something like a granule. Can the other person please mute the mic, please?
Yeah, I will ask. You stay connected. I'll ask you questions.
This is a young patient who presented like a granuloma-like lesion. Actually, what the patient had is a cavernous hemangioma with a tractional detachment involved in the macula. This is one rare situation where we have done a vitrectomy, and you can see post-vitrectomy settling reattachment of the macular lesion. But more commonly, we see the peripapillary angioma. This is the retinal angioma associated with von Hippel-Lindau disease, peripapillary angiomas, which can result in exudation. These can be treated with photodynamic therapy more commonly. In the absence of PDT, we can do TTT or a laser photocoagulation. This is one patient who had a large exudative detachment with the peripapillary angioma. Here we had to drain the fluid. So what you see here is a subretinal transscleral drainage using the needle. We drained the fluid, reattached the retina, and the lesion was treated with laser photocoagulation. So vascular tumors, if it is something like a racemose or a cavernous hemangioma, patients already have lost vision because of involvement of macula, and we don't have to treat them, just follow them up. But in select situations, we treat. But what we need to remember is that these are part of phacomatoses. Cavernous hemangioma, racemose hemangioma, von Hippel-Lindau, all are phacomatoses. So these patients should necessarily undergo neuroimaging as well as systemic evaluation. Moving on to another bunch of lesions. So here we see a flat gray, white, round or oval smooth surface lesion, which is an astrocytoma. This is called as the young tuberous bodies. The old tuberous bodies are the mulberry or the tapioca astrocytoma, which can be glistening yellow-white calcified tumor with multiple small excrescences. And astrocytoma do not need treatment most often, but then we need to see if the patient has underlying tuberous sclerosis.
You have 1 minute remaining, sir.
Multiple astrocytomas in both the eyes, and then we look for tuberous sclerosis. So this child has adenoma sebaceum, and you can see there is retinal detachment in one eye as well. But there is a small bunch of aggressive astrocytomas which can present with exudative retinal detachment and loss of vision with vitreous hemorrhage. So these are very difficult to treat. We have treated these with laser, PDT, brachytherapy, vitrectomy, subretinal fluid drainage, anti-VEGF, and even enucleation because of painful blind eye. So this is one subset of astrocytomas which we need to keep in mind. So here is an interesting patient. This lady had bilateral mastectomy and then presented with this little lesion at the optic nerve. So this is the disc metastasis. So we sent the patient back to the oncologist to treat the patient with systemic chemotherapy. But despite the chemotherapy, the lesion increased to involve the disc and resulted in a central retinal artery and a vein occlusion and lost light perception. And we ultimately treated this patient with intravitreal chemotherapy, resulting in regression of the lesion but loss of vision. So yet another systemic disease which can involve the eye and can present with bilateral.
So your time is up.
I'll take another minute. Bilateral hypopyon. Yes. So you can see what you can see here is a hypopyon with a convex border and composed of thick cells. And so this is how leukemic infiltrates in the eye can present, but they can have optic disc infiltration. So here we have an optic disc infiltration in the left eye of leukemia. The right eye looks pretty much normal, but when you do the OCT, you can see the margins are elevated. So the right eye is also involved. Not all elevated disc in leukemia is because of the leukemic infiltration. It could be because of papillary edema. It could be because of an infection, because of the lowered immunity, or because of vascular occlusions as well. So how do you treat this patient? Systemic leukemic therapy can take care of the optic disc infiltration. And if they don't respond, these patients may have to be treated with external beam radiation therapy as well. Lymphoma can also involve the optic disc, and if it is associated with systemic lymphoma, we treat them with systemic treatment, which is chemotherapy. And if it is not resolving, eye can be treated with EBRT. And primary intraocular lymphoma, as well as lymphoma associated systemic disease, we do treat them with intravitreal chemotherapy also. If it is only primary intraocular lymphoma, we treat them only with intravitreal chemotherapy and not a systemic chemotherapy, but there is some controversy about that. The agents used are rituximab and methotrexate. So retinoblastoma, yes, we do come across retinoblastoma involving the optic disc very often. So we have to do an imaging, and if the tumor is involving the optic nerve and extending behind the eye into the optic nerve, these patients will need enucleation followed by adjuvant chemotherapy. If the tumor is not extending through the optic nerve, then we can try eye salvage with intravenous chemotherapy, intraarterial chemotherapy, as well as attempt eye salvage. The non-malignant variant is the retinocytoma, which can once again be an incidental finding. So what we see here is the retinocytoma. A careful observation is what is required. To summarize, primary and secondary tumors may involve the optic disc. Most need no treatment, but associated phacomatoses should be evaluated. Vascular tumors, we do local treatment to preserve vision. Malignant lesions, systemic and local treatment is what is required. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahesh. I just wanted to ask you one question. How does an optic nerve glioma, which is posterior to the optic disc, present as?
That can present with the vascular malformations overlying the disc, and then or subsequently can present with the disc edema unilateral. So an imaging is what will show up as if it is a lesion which is behind the nerve band.
So early lesions may actually present as if it's normal too, no?
Yeah, it can present, but then there can be associated other signs also, isn't it? So it can present like that, but then we look for the vascular malformations on the surface as well.
Dr. Srinivas?
I have a question to Dr. Mahesh sir. Mahesh sir, a nice talk as always. In cases of combined hematomas, as you mentioned, where they have attraction and you saw all those signs, in how many of these cases we have to intervene? Because I have done 3 of the surgeries in that, and they do improve by 1 or 2 lines. So do you still think that operating on these cases, even if it is 2 Sneller line improvement, a chance, and what are the high chances of recurrence in these cases? Because they have not followed up with me for long.
Yeah, the overall results are not too great as in an idiopathic ERM what you would get. That's because the glial tissue involves the inner part of the retina as well, and there is disorganization of the retina. So if it is a young patient and the foveal anatomy is not too much distorted because of the tumor, but because of the ERM, then I would attempt a surgery. But if the foveal anatomy is distorted because the tumor is involving it, then there is no point in attempting surgery. And as I mentioned, literature also suggests if it are, or at best you will probably have 1 line improvement or 2 lines improvement, and there is always an associated amblyopia in these patients. So we should think quite a bit before we attempt surgery in these patients, because it's not worth the visual results which we get in these patients.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes. Yes, Jatinder.
Yeah, actually, ERM formation may be a part of the lesion itself, the combined hematoma. At times, it can happen secondarily. So if you have noted a normal foveal contour or no ERM at the macula earlier, and subsequent follow-up, you have a secondary ERM formation, those cases actually do well as compared to the eyes which have a primary involvement of the macula because of the combined hematoma.
It's a little difficult to make out because most of the time
only if you have
with involvement of the tumor.
Only if you have documented evidence that it is secondarily involved, you can see, bravely go ahead with the surgery. They have good outcome.
Okay. Any other discussion, Dr. Avinash? You have anything to add before we go on to our next?
Wants to say something.
I have a question to Dr. Mahesh. Nice talk. One question was, in your experience of the optic disc melanocytoma, how many patients have you seen progression of the lesion?
Progression is not very uncommon, madam. Like I showed, the patient developing optic neuritis with the vitreous seeding and neuroretinitis growth. All this I have seen, but malignant transformation is exceedingly rare. So I have not seen a malignant transformation very commonly, but progression, yes, it can happen in a bunch of patients.
What is your duration of follow-up, or how much duration do you keep as a follow-up period?
Depends on the size of the lesion. If it is just very small, just about incidental finding, I would see the patient once in a year. But as I showed you, if the patient is having a little larger elevated lesion, which with visual field defects, then I would probably see the patient if I'm seeing the patient for the first time once in 3 months to see if they're developing any complications. A couple of visits, if they're fine, then probably once in 6 months or once in a year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Rashmi?
No, I just wanted to comment because this is for the PGs. So
yes.
You spoke about glioma. They should make sure that they look at the signs for neurofibromatosis because those two can be associated. optic nerve glioma with neurofibrosis.
Yes. Thank you. Anything else? Shall we go on to our next speaker? Our next speaker is Dr. Your talk was really good, Dr. Mahesh, of course.